Hi, Zodiac Souls. This is Kayla, and today, excuse me, we're going somewhere most astrology content never dares to go. We're talking about confessions, like they're just like little thoughts that I have, okay? Um, that I believe that each zodiac sign would make if they had complete anonymity and zero judgment. So this isn't your typical Aries love adventure fire content. This is about the real, raw human struggles that live behind each zodiac's archetype. The stuff people don't post on Instagram, the internal battles that happens when nobody's watching. I was inspired to create this episode after seeing how much we sanitize astrology. We talk about strengths and gifts, but we rarely talk about the shadow work each sign needs to do. The uncomfortable truths, so will you, the patterns that keep us stuck. So today we're going there. We're talking about what Aries would confess about confusing cravings with callings. What Cancer would admit about giving so much love, they forget to keep any for themselves. What Scorpio would whisper about protecting themselves so well, they forget how to let love in. If you're ready for some real talk about the human experience through an astrological lens, let's dive in. Aries. I don't always know the difference between a calling and a craving. So let's start with Aries, our cosmic fire starter. If Aries walked into a confession booth, they'd probably burst through the door like they do everything else, fast, fiery, and without hesitation. But what happens when the door closes and the silence sets in? Here's what Aries would confess. I don't always know the difference between a calling and a craving. Now, this hits different because Aries is supposed to be the intuitive action taker, right? The one who knows what to do and goes for it. But here's the thing, Aries often confuses impulse with intuition. They chase what excites them, what lights them up, what makes them feel alive in the moment. And while that passion is absolutely sacred, it can sometimes be misleading because not every fire is meant to be lit, right? Not every urge is going to be a divine calling. Sometimes what feels like spiritual guidance is just a dopamine taking a hit. This confession isn't about shaming Aries for their enthusiasm. I think it's more about sacred discernment. It's about learning that sometimes the most courageous thing an Aries can do is to pause, to breathe, to pray, to ask their spirit, not just their gut, what the next move should be. Because here's the truth, Aries, it's not a sign that just wants to move fast. They want to move faithfully. They want their actions to like align with their purpose, not just their impulses. The healing for Aries comes in learning to sit with desire before acting on it. To ask, is this calling me towards my highest good, or is this just feeding a pattern, That pause, that breath, that prayer. I think that's where real spiritual courage lives. Moving on to Taurus, our cosmic stability keeper. If Taurus enter the confession booth, they do it slowly, deliberately, sitting with quiet dignity, like someone who's carried more than they've let on. And then they'd exhale this truth. I pretend I'm fine when I'm actually just frozen. This one gets me because Taurus is known for their strength, their ability to weather any storm, their unshakable nature. But sometimes that strength becomes a mask, a performance, a way to avoid the vulnerability of admitting that they're not okay. The confession here is about the difference between groundness and stagnation. Ours doesn't always feel safe falling apart, so instead, sometimes they freeze, they go quiet, they dig their heels in, and they call it being fine. But inside, there's like this storm of feelings that they never given themselves permission to feel. And I recommend to look into your moon and rising. So I'm not just speaking to your sun sign, by the way. And in some ways, I'm more so speaking to your moon sign. Um, in this degree, your subconscious was typically hidden. But going back to Taurus, inside, like I said, could be a storm of feelings that you've never given yourself permission to feel. And this is where Taurus needs a sacred invitation to soften. You realize that softness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the soil where healing actually grows. Taurus doesn't need to bulldoze their way through discomfort. They need to sit with it, to breathe into it, to let it teach them something holy. Because sometimes what looks like stability is actually just paralysis wearing a prettier name. And I think that the healing journey for Taurus involves learning that they can be grounded and growing at the same time, that they can feel their feelings without losing their foundation, that they can process without falling apart. Now let's talk about Gemini, our cosmic communicators. Picture Gemini stepping into that confession booth with like a little nervous laugh, and they already got a clever quip ready. But the moment the doors open, the silence hits and something just kind of shifts. Their confession: I talk, so I don't have to feel. This hits deep because Gemini's mind is genuinely a marvel. It is quick, curious, always two steps ahead, the sign of the twins. But sometimes that brilliance, it can become a defense mechanism, a way to avoid the deeper, messier emotions that don't fit into any witty one-liners. Gemini often fills space with words so they don't have to sit with what's underneath. They are the ones who intellectualize their pain. They explain their way around their feelings. They can give you 15 different perspectives on why they're upset, but they struggle to just sit with the upset itself. This confession is about the sacred art of stillness. And for Gemini, stillness isn't boring, it's brave. It's a space where their spirit can finally speak louder than their thought. The healing for Gemini comes in learning that they don't have to explain everything. They don't need to have words for every feeling. Sometimes the most profound communication actually kind of just happens in silence. Sometimes the wisest thing they can say is nothing at all. When Gemini learns to sit with their emotions without immediately trying to analyze or articulate them, that's when the real transformation happens. That's when they discover that feeling doesn't always require a thesis statement or a novel. Cancer, she enters the confession booth like a prayer, gentle, sacred, and already emotional. But behind all that nurturing energy is a truth they rarely admit, even to themselves. They're tired. Cancer confession: I give so much love, I forget to keep any for myself. See, I see Cancer's heart like a cathedral, vast, holy, and always open. Cancers give love like it's oxygen, like it's their natural state of being. But in their devotion to others, they often forget to breathe for themselves. This confession is about sacred boundaries. Cancer believes that love means saying yes, being available, holding space for everyone who needs it. But I believe that true love, sustainable love, it does require limits. It requires the courage to say, not mine to carry, or not right now. And I think this is what Cancer needs to understand, that boundaries aren't barriers, they're sacred architecture. They're how Cancer protects their own sacred softness without shutting down their heart. The healing journey for Cancer involves learning that their love is not a loophole for disrespect, that they can be nurturing without being a doormat, that saying no to what depletes them is actually saying yes to what I think feeds them. Because when Cancer learns to mother themselves with the same tenderness that they show others, everything for them just changes. They realize that they can't pour from overflow instead of like depletion. So Leo will walk into that confession booth, child, like a spotlight, follow them in. But when that curtain drops and the crowd disappears, a quieter truth is going to emerge. Leo's confession: I want to be adored, but I'm afraid to be alone. This is different because Leo's need for validation, it isn't vanity. I don't think it is that. I think it's vulnerability more so. They want to be seen, celebrated, and cherished, but underneath that desire is like a fear. If no one's watching, do I even still matter? Leo's confession is about the difference between performing radiance and actually being radiant. Their light, it doesn't come from applause, it comes from alignment, from knowing that they are worthy of love even when the room is empty. And the real glow up for Leo is learning to shine for themselves, learning to be their own audience, learning that their worth isn't determined by how many people are watching. This doesn't mean Leo has to give up their love of attention or celebration. It means they get to enjoy those things as additions to their self worth, not substitutes for it. Because the healing journey for Leo involves spending time alone and discovering that they're still magnificent, even without witnesses. That their creativity, that their joy, that it still flows and bubbles up, that their light still shines, even when they're in solitude. When she enters the confession booth, she's coming in with a clipboard and a plan. Probably one of them little roly, the boards that like it got the back, had the back and the front to it with the wheels on it. One of those. Probably having mentally organized exactly what they want to say, but when the structure falls away, what's going to be left is a heart that's tired of carrying the weight of perfection. Virgo's confession is I try to fix everything so I don't have to feel anything. So Virgo's gift is their ability to see what's broken and imagine how it could be better. But sometimes that gift for them it becomes a burden, a way to avoid the messiness of simply just being human. This confession is about surrender. Virgo doesn't have to fix everything. They don't have to earn their worth or usefulness. They're allowed to feel first before they fix. They're allowed to let things be messy sometimes. And here's what Virgo just needs to understand is that healing isn't a checklist. It's a conversation with the divine. It's not always linear, logical, or controllable. The healing journey for Virgo involves asking, where am I micromanaging what God already has covered? It's about trusting that some things are meant to unfold naturally without their intervention. And when Virgo learns to sit with imperfection, both in themselves and their environment, without immediately trying to connect with it, they're going to discover a peace they never even freaking knew existed. Libra. Libra walks into the confession booth with grace, probably holding the door for someone else first. But behind all that diplomacy is a deep, aching truth that they've been carrying. Libra's confession is I keep the peace even when it costs me my truth. So, see, Libra is the cosmic peacemaker, the balancer, the one who can see the sides of all sides of every situation. But sometimes they can feel this gift becoming more of a curse because they're bending, they're shrinking, they're compromising until they don't even recognize who they are anymore. This confession, I feel, is more about radical authenticity. Peace isn't real if it requires self abandonment. Harmony isn't holy if it's going to silence your truth. And what I think Libras need to hear is that they're not responsible for everybody's comfort, okay? Their job isn't to make sure everyone else is happy while they disappear in the process. The healing journey for Libra, it involves learning that sometimes disrupting the balance is necessary for like authentic growth. That conflict isn't always bad. Sometimes it's sacred tension that leads to real resolution. And when Libra learns to speak their truth, even when it might create temporary discomfort, they discover that real harmony comes from everyone being authentic, not from everyone just getting along to just get along. Now, when my Scorpio babes walk into the confession booth like a secret, they are guarded, intense, carrying the weight of everything they've ever said. But inside that armor is a longing they rarely admit that they do have a desire to be truly seen. Scorpio's confession is I protect myself so well, I forget how to let love in. Scorpio's depth is divine, but their armor can become a prison. They've been hurt before, so they protect, they withhold, they test. But guys, love isn't a battlefield, it's a sanctuary. This confession is about sacred vulnerability. Scorpio doesn't have to bare their soul to everyone, but they do deserve to be known, to be loved, and to be held in their wholeness. The healing journey for Scorpio involves recognizing that they can be open and still be wise. They can lower their walls without losing their discernment. They can trust without being naive. When Scorpio learns to let people earn their trust gradually instead of demanding they prove themselves through tests, that's when they're going to see that real intimacy will become possible. Now, Sag, she is entering the confession booth like a gust of wind, okay? Restless, bold, and already thinking about the next adventure. But beneath all that wanderlust is a truth that they rarely sit still long enough to hear. I see their confession as I run before I root. Sagittarius, they're running from something. Sag loves freedom, but sometimes freedom becomes avoidance. They chase the horizon because staying still, for them, it feels like surrender. But what if stillness is where the real wisdom lives? This confession is about rooted expansion. Sag doesn't have to give up her wings, but she does need to find her soil. You need to learn that depth and freedom can coexist. The healing journey for Sagittarius involves asking questions such as, what am I running from that might actually be ready to heal? Sometimes the adventure you're seeking is actually the journey inward. Now, my Aquarius babes, they're going to enter the confession booth like a satellite. They're going to be observing, analyzing, and orbiting, but never quite landing. Behind that cool detachment is a heart, though, longs for connection. Aquarius's confession would be that I stay detached so I don't get disappointed. Aquarius, she protects her heart with logic. She intellectualizes her emotions. They stay just far enough away to feel safe. But safety isn't the same as intimacy. The healing journey involves asking a question such as, what part of me am I afraid to let be loved? Aquarius says you don't have to lose yourself to be loved. They just have to be willing to be seen. Not my sign. Finally, I, Pisces, enters the confession booth like a wave, gentle, emotional, already halfway to tears, but probably already in tears. Their confession is soft but deep. Ours is I feel everything and then I drown in it. Pisces sensitivity is sacred, but when they don't have boundaries around their emotions, ooh, they spiral or crash out, as the kids say. They absorb everything. They lose themselves in the tide. This confession is about emotional stewardship. Pisces is here to feel, but also to flow, to learn how to hold our emotions in without being consumed by them. The healing involves understanding that their sensitivity is sacred, not shameful, that they can feel deeply and still maintain their center. These confessions aren't meant to shame any sign or make anyone feel exposed, okay? They're meant to normalize the human experience behind the astrological archetypes, to remind us that everyone is working through something regardless of their cosmic blueprint. The beauty of astrology isn't that it defines us, it's that it gives us language for our struggles and roadmaps for our healing. And each confession is also a doorway to growth, to deeper self awareness, and to more authentic living. Your sun sign confession might resonate completely, or you might find yourself nodding along to your moon sign or rising sign instead. And that's the beauty of having a full birth chart. We all contain multitudes. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is consciousness. It's about seeing our patterns clearly so we can choose differently. It's about extending compassion to ourselves and others as we all navigate this beautiful, messy human experience. Remember, your struggles don't make you broken, they make you human. And your willingness to look at them honestly, that's what makes you brave. That's all for today's deep dive into Zodiac Confessions. If this episode helped you see yourself or others with more compassion, please share it with someone who just may need that reminder. Let me know in the comments which confession hit you the hardest, or if you have your own confession to add onto that list. Remember, the stars don't define you, they reveal you, and every revelation is an invitation to grow. Until next time, keep being brave enough to look in the mirror, compassionate enough to love what you see, and wise enough to just keep on growing. Sacred chaos,